this concept of allowing a person to fail, leading them to appreciate and learn a better way is, there. I don't think there's anything along the way that you're going to learn that you're not going to fail at in the beginning, right? Even if you get someone to say, go put the coffee in here, do it here, when you approach it, you're still going to have problems. It's a little hard. Do I fill the water up here? So it's inherent in already part of the mechanism. What I'm sharing is that taking it back to what's happening up here when we do that. What happens when we allow a student to continue to create a pattern in the synapses firing, and those things are beginning to wire in, and then I'm going to come back around, and now I'm going to try to change that wiring.
Yeah.
That's what I'm alluding to, that maybe I want to take a look at as training. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I think you got to be careful of that, what you just said, which is, I agree 100%. No. Because when you let a student go on their, you show demonstrate your technique, then you let them figure out, you do a little bit on their own. But you as instructor have to know when to reel them back, because before you know it, they'll start doing wrong patterns. So you got to know when to jump into the reel them back, go over things again, so you can really start guiding those patterns in their brain and in the learning process. So that's one thing that instructors have to really look at the individual student needs. What are they messing up on? What are they not getting? What are they not getting that I taught? Maybe what don't they understand? But you have to know when to jump in there when you do let them. How much freedom do you give a student to do exactly what you said to get the learning process going? I think that's individual. Like I said, everybody's different. Like you just asked, what's wrong with a student who picks it up real quick? Is there anything wrong with that? Has he established patterns? Well, maybe in his brain he has. It takes this guy 5 minutes. This guy takes 5 days. I've seen that. We've all seen that. So everybody is different, and as an instructor, you just got to know.
I would submit on that part, and Aaron, maybe you can chime in on this one. The part of I got to know, right, from a training aspect. Well, I submit it is known. What is the best training technique that I can implement for myself and for my students as a baseline? And do I want to not change what I'm doing, but add that arsenal to my training or how I'm teaching a student? And I submit to you, in Aikido, I think we have a real problem here. As far as the pros and the cons outweigh the pros, as I see it. And the reason I think this is taking place is because of the philosophy of we're coming out of how it was being taught. And it was perfect for that time. And not to say we got to throw the whole bath water out. I'm saying that taking times of change in the essence of our knowledge, times of change in the essence of the tools that we use, all of these things. Are we going to keep holding on to that tradition? I don't know. Or are we going to look and go, for example, you heard me on other podcasts submit this, that one of the best tools out there for accelerated learning or getting to highest levels you can quickly is deliberate practice. Now, deliberate practice foundation is built upon a structured approach to how to learn. And it's scientifically been proven. You know what you're probably going to you heard the 10,000 hour rule?
10,000 repetitions.
10,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, 10,000. You see, it's 10,000 hours and everything. Well, that was a quote from another man misquoting the person who wrote the book, right? He took it, it sounded good, but he didn't elaborate on the rest of it. So he kind of took that and made a thing out of it. I submit to you that everything on that is leading to one thing. What am I trying to influence? As I train, when I go to the dojo, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to get those synapses, those wiring to be good so I can get the foundation of the technique. The question that arises is, how do we approach at that? I think traditional Aikido, it's problematic in this area. And my question for you, Aaron, if you don't mind going for it, is how does a person who's training get that knowledge? You know, if you hear, hey, this seems to be working really good, How do you get that knowledge?
Well, I don't know that I clearly understand the question, but I hear that, I understand that there's, we're talking about, new ways and new methods and, traditional ways. And that's a tough question. It's a tough question to answer. Can you ask the same question in a different way?
A different format? Yeah, I guess what I'm kind of saying is that there seems to be in training, especially in the dojo, a resistance that says, hey, no, no, no. You're coming up and saying, okay, hey, right here, this is a book on high performance, how to train, to learn better so I can absorb what my teacher's saying, that I can increase. And the reluctance to say, no, no, that's not traditional.
Right, right. Okay. Well, I think the you it's hard to discuss Aikido separately from Japanese traditions. I think it's hard to separate those two. So, and when we're talking about training methods and altering training methods based on modern this or that, really we're talking about separating these things out. This modern way works better than this other way. But the Japanese do was designed. It was designed to improve the person. So I'm kind of stuck in my mind back to, the Japanese method, the traditions, the Do arts are there to improve the person. They're not there to make killer martial artists. They are there that if that is the case, then we should be looking at jitsu arts. And I know we've talked about this, but in this case, we're talking about training in Aikido and newer methods that may allow us more efficiencies in the retention and the accumulation of knowledge, perhaps, and how these new ways might be better than, the traditional methods. But in
Right.
my mind, I'm still stuck with, I can't see how we can exclude the Japanese traditions from the art of Aikido. And there are so much of that is ingrained in the art, the essence of the art. So it's hard for me to carve those things out or to separate those two.
Yeah, I'd like to circle back on that. Go ahead, Steve. Get some input. Good job, guys.
Yeah, with some what Aaron is saying, I think in reality, the old method from the old days, and when I say old days, let's go before 1980, right? And ignore that because we're,
The old days.
time was different. We're so time limited now in the
Yeah.
dojo that I've got to think of easy ways for these students to get what they have to do because they have real life, real jobs. I'm not that I did in those days, but the old traditional method worked well for non-complicated ways of life, I think. I mean, life is how complicated you make it, but it was different then. And now, people come in, they're rushed, they have their jobs, family, and they want to learn Aikido. They're dedicated, but you've got to think as an instructor, how can we get the idea of Aikido across to the best method that I'm able to teach in a limited amount of time?
That's kind of the root when I'm looking at the question. Go ahead. That's very good.
Continue. Repetition. Yeah, repetition going in an hour and a half, when in the earlier years, it was, in our earlier days, I worked out in Aikido at Shishikan, 5 days a week.
Right.
And now I'm down to 3 in an hour, hour and a half in the end. Then it went down to 2, 3 days, and it's a different world. So, and things got more complicated as time went on with family, jobs, financial. Not saying it didn't happen then. I mean, they had the wars and they had all their problems. But it's like I said, I think we're time limited now, and we have to think of different methodologies to get our points across in teaching to the best of our ability. And what are those answers? I don't have them all.
Yeah, can I tie it back into what Aaron's saying? That was very good. I understand what you're saying, Aaron, about this taken apart. I submit to you though, it's not. I don't think it is, because we're not coming in and saying you have to throw out what's there. What it is saying is, it's like a carpenter has his tools, he's working. And then all of a sudden some engineer guy goes, hey, check this out, dude. And the carpenter looks at it and goes, whoa, I'm going to add it to my tools. Now, this used to work pretty good, but this tool's better and giving me better results. So he brings it in and he makes it work with inside his toolbox. That's what I'm submitting to you, that we're not getting rid of the tradition. What we're getting rid of is maybe what Steve's alluding to. How do I meet my personal training needs, the needs of my students in that time frame that we find ourselves in? And I submit also, you made a good allusion to that do jujitsu and everything. I would say it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter, because how most people want to do the best that they can do, right? They're coming in. The majority of people walk in the door. They're like, hey, I want to learn this. I want to do the best that I can do. And
the wheel's invented, though, right? So the wheel's already been invented.
Yes.
It's been invented already. Okay, so man is not going to twist a wrist any different. Our bodies are not going to articulate any different than they did 1,000 years ago, right? So it's the same human form for the most part. I mean, it's the same human form for millennia, right? So, the stuff that we think is new, I've actually been reading a lot on this exact thing. There's nothing that we do today that's actually new, or very little, in the sense of, do this, do 1,000 push-ups, or do 1,000 reps of this, or do 1,000 cuts of this, or a bunch of reps of that, or try spinning this way or that way or whatever. We're not inventing anything today. Okay, it's that body of knowledge is there, and as modern martial artists, the things that we think are new, I think we can go back and there are precedents, or those that have gone before us have probably covered this.
Good
and so here we are 1,000 years later. We have less time today than folks did 1,000 years ago. So for us to think that today that we're going to bring, I don't know, maybe we have efficiencies, but I don't know that we're going to do anything an order of magnitude different. Maybe. And I would also say that, Eugene, I think you're studying in areas that I haven't read the same materials, and so I don't have any preconceptions as and I'm not familiar with the body of knowledge that when you're referring to it, I'm not as familiar with it. So
interject. Let's kick that on that the tires on that and see what happens.
Yeah.
You made some good statements, and I agree with a lot of them. There is difference, though. There is. The wheel has been made, but before it was made with stone. Now it's made with rubber. Now that's made with special ways that it moves, with that NASCAR car that's able to accelerate faster. So there is room for improvement, right? And that's what I'm alluding to, is that with Aikido and going in, what are we trying to influence? We're trying to influence up here. When I'm training, I'm trying to get those synapses, everything to do what they need to do to fire correctly, so I can get that foundation so I can go deeper, right? I don't think that there's anything that I can see wrong with that. I don't, and I think most people nowadays are like, okay, I'm going to get this knowledge. I'm going to be able to do this little stuff here, and it's going to increase, versus being slower, taking longer, because what?
Right. And I would say, well, so then I would ask for clarification on this modern, efficient way.
Yeah, I would not even say it's modern.
What is this thing that works with this? So we understand the traditional side, and we're saying, okay, this is the tradition, and this is what I'm talking about. But you're talking about something new. What is that? What is that new thing that you're talking about? Because we haven't really talked about. We've talked about tradition and kind of defined that. and it's with, put some parameters around it. But we
I'll
haven't
share
put
with you.
parameters around this new and improved way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's called Sensei Wasserman's Quick Learning Technique. At the end of the podcast, for only $9.99.
Yeah, I mean, what's the definition of tradition? What I go
Sure.
Matt, I wash my feet before I come on. Where are we going to draw the line? What is traditional teaching?
Can I interject a path for and move into the next segue? What is that, right? A traditional, all this. I taught this next segment is called activity versus results. This is the bottom line.
Yep.
Getting inside the dojo and getting results versus activity. Defining activity. Going in with no point of reference of what you're trying to do, no goals, no standards. I'm just here to just move through. It doesn't increase. There's no way of increasing what I'm learning.
So you're saying you have no goals. You're just doing. There's no goal.
Yeah, that's just part of it. There's no goal. There's no structure to the tangible, measurable ways that I know. Not because I tell my students, I go, hey, how do you know if you're progressing? And I asked a buddy of mine who's takes karate, and his answer was, my sensei will let me know. And to a point, that's good. But that gets back to is if the only way you're able to know you're getting better is because your sensei is telling you, then this is far from result orientated expectations. Like a samurai back in the old days, he's a warrior. He's not concerned about activity in the dojo. He's concerned about results, that when that person attacks me, I'm able to cut them down.
He's also
certain ways of approaching that versus not approaching that. So that's the meat of this. When I have a student, am I finding the best ways to get that knowledge across to that student to add to my arsenal of what I have? And I submit to you, yeah, there is. What do you feel about results versus activity in your own dojo, Steve, in your own personal training?
Well, going back to what you said, in those days, they were Ronins, and they always wanted to perfect their art because they were on their own and they had to get good. They didn't wait for an instructor in those days to tell them you're very good, grasshopper. So coming back to your question, but back to your question again, what
can you distinguish? I apologize, I framed it wrong, and I'm trying to. Aaron hit such good points, man. I'm trying to build on those and get back to them because they're powerful. Not separating the two. That's powerful. Are you able to go into your dojo and look at your own training or your students' training and did my students just have activity that day, or did we walk out having results? As small as they have to be, to have results versus activity, I think leads back to something very important: honoring a person's time.
Yeah. Well, I could just, okay. Here's one way that in looking at that is from a training methodology. I use this is to create a lesson plan that's bite-sized and that's attainable for the day, and to do things like to review all of the students after class. We do things like we'll get into a circle, maybe we worked on 2 or 3 techniques, and then everybody gets up after class and everybody shows what they show the end result of that 1 hour of training. So there's an example it's an example of what you're talking about. So it's not so much, okay, I don't want to see Aikido. I want to see I purposefully limit the number of techniques or the amount of surface area that we cover in a class. And I almost always keep it very narrow. And then if we do that review after class, it puts the individual on the spot, the student on the spot, and their peers get to review their progress. So a lot of times what you'll see, and it's really powerful when I like to do this when you have your brand new white belt or they're in for their first week of class, and then you put them up at the end of on a Friday night, and you put them up, and they get to show everybody Ikkyo because they've been working on Ikkyo all week.
Right.
They worked on Ikkyo the last 3 classes that I had with that person. We've worked on Ikkyo. Now let's have a review in front of your peers, and let's review Ikkyo. So I mean, I think that's kind of in line with results versus activity. So it's not, Kobe Bryant. I guess in his book, his part of his training was he would do 1,000 jump shots.
Right.
Well, no. He wouldn't perform 1,000 jump shots. He would shoot 1,000 baskets, and if it took him 1,300 attempts, he didn't go home until 1,000 balls went into the net.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's a goal-oriented training approach versus just practice just for the sake of practice. I think we can correlate that to perhaps maybe what you're suggesting.
Yes, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Yes, everything you articulated so far. Once you explore, and I'll send you the links. The link will be down below for the others interested. On deliberate practice, it's powerful, man. It's talking to almost everything that you're saying right here. If you don't mind, Steve, go ahead and sound in.
So with that kind of practice, and where do we draw the line, and where do we start reviewing? When do we bring back the old stuff versus just the new stuff we're working on? Do we accumulate everything, moves to the next step? Well, yeah, Aikido is built on one thing after another. But if we're going to be demonstrating things, instructor, when do we go back a few cues and bring those up to have the student demonstrate it? To really see what patterns they've learned and how goal oriented, how did they stick to their goals? Did they just stick to the goal, learning that one cue rank and leave it? So we have to, make sure that these things are on a continuum. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah. Would I submit to you on that same thing? Wouldn't that be what you would do in your own personal training? I mean, I want to go from here. I want to improve flow, let's say. And I'm going to go in the dojo and I'm going to work on flow, right? That's my goal. But how do I know I'm getting there? And I'll allude to that real quick on that one.
That's a tough example, by the way, to try to wrap a definition around flow.
Whoa, yeah. Which we understand is a higher concept, right?
Right.
The new guy who came in learning Ikkyo, isn't going to be working on.
When a student can do the Aikitaiso, like when you look at new students come to your dojo and they do the Aikitaiso and you're demonstrating it, I can tell right there overall who's going to be a decent student. Mm-hmm. They're watching and they're catching it, they're following, they're engaged, they're questioning right from the beginning. Some of the simple, basic stuff. Yeah. I know that's my test on new students.
So can I interject something? You made me remember something, and I didn't get it set up for the podcast, but I'll try to get the link down below. There was this thing on YouTube, right? It said McDojo versus Real Dojo, and I'm like, man, I don't want to watch this. They're just going to harp on this stuff, and I gave in, and it was great. It was they were doing it with karate, and the biggest thing that I saw was that you have what they would call the McDojos, and you would watch the students, and they were all doing different things. There was no systematic approach. That when they presented it as a kata team, people were out of sync, people not doing certain things right. They would show that. Then they would show a similarity to another dojo, and they were like bam, 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 hardcore. And then they would keep showing results on that. And I went, oh my God, that is a good thing about activity versus results. I tell my students all the time, I say, hey man, the most important thing is I honor your time walking through that door. I'm going to make sure your time with me is going to be fruitful. In order to do that, I have to do a lot of thinking. Real quick, what about do we do with this? And along this line, the student that says, well, I really don't care about ranking. I'm just here just to go for it. I'm not sure if I articulate that correctly. Those students, you talk to them, it could be high ranking, low ranking. I don't really care about the belt, right? The ranking. I'll set the stage and go for it. I had to do a lot of searching on this. I think that ranking is a byproduct of your training. right? The focus doesn't have to be on the, I'm going to go to my next cue. The focus is on what are the techniques. And if I'm doing those correctly, getting ready to, my sensei moving me up in ranking should be a byproduct of this. But if you have a person who doesn't even have a motive, caring about the ranking, then there's no motive to really learn the technique, which becomes problematic. Go, Steve. You got your
Yeah,
like,
that's
where's your little signs? I miss them.
yeah.
Right.
But yeah, that's come up a lot in my dojo. There's different students that come in, one for the social, one to just get physical exercise. Two, they have ego to get promoted. And the other ones just want to work hard and are goal oriented and want to see themselves progress. So you got those four kind of different students that are there. And who am I to tell them what they want? You just got to do your job as instructor and what you can. But if you don't have ranking, there's two types of ranking. There's ego ranking, and again, the goal-orientated, seeing results like you just described. There's different kinds of the ego guy and the one who just really wants to see some results and how he progresses. They want to rank. Mm-hmm. And I emphasize what I just said. You want the ranking, you want that goal. Okay, how you're going to use it, that's up to your ego, not on my time. But you get those kind of students and all they care about is the belt. We've all had them. But
can you think of one discipline in the world that gets high performance that wasn't goal orientated?
Well, I think every profession, every martial art, every art, everything has exactly what I described there. There's different people in business for those same reasons. I'm going to become vice president. You don't deserve it, but your ego, you think you're going to try to get there. Mm-hmm. So one profession that, say it again.
Yeah, the reason I'm alluding is that as you're saying, those different creatures that are in there, these people, they have different areas. But me as an instructor, one of the things I've seen, tell me, Aaron, if you experience this, you have that person who goes to the dojo and his training methodology is, okay, I'm not here for the ranking. I really don't care about the fighting. I like the art, but I just want to do it, right? And those are beautiful words. I think pretty words, right? But I do see the problem with that because you have other students that are coming in and you match these people up. They become very what is the word? Dracula time suckers. Dracula time suckers, because they're going to demand more of your attention. We have to go over this again. We have to do this again. Another person lining up with that person. This person's trying to train, but there's different, they're not in sync.
Well, yeah, I mean, I got people that come to the dojo once a week and I just showed Kodogash. Now they want it. Now I have to go over it because they didn't get it. Now I'm pairing up with someone who's there, 3-4 days a week. And there's what you're describing right there.
How about you, Aaron? You get this, I know you.
Well,